Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys football. The fellas heading out to the Big 12 as the Kansas State Wildcats go on the road and play a Baylor Bears team that, yes, had a very unfortunate start to the season where they were giving up some special teams mistakes, some pick sixes in the West Virginia game. But this Baylor team, 4-2 in conference play, they're looking at another shot at a Big 12 championship team. Dave Aranda, he just wins games, and it's not always pretty. But they're 6-3, 4-2 in the conference against Kansas State, who is also sitting at 4-2 in the conference. This is a massive game for teams that want to get in the Big 12 championship game. Before we get into the preview, the predictions, we just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown the channel. We love making these videos. We love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. The support you guys have shown truly means a lot. So if you guys do like the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dale, I know Baylor has been your team through the thick and thin. What are your early takes on this game?
No, that's where you're wrong. They were my team, but I'm losing some belief in them simply because their team I thought was going to be so good on the front seven that they were going to be a problem for everybody. They're just not that unit. I think that unit is good, but it's not like Georgia or some of these really great D lines that we've seen in college football. And that's proving to be an issue because they did lose so much of that back end. And you knew that unit was going to have its growing pains, struggles, not be probably a shutdown unit. And I don't think their D line's picking up the slack exactly.
Yeah, that's a team like Siaki Ika, Gabe Hall, like those guys are really good against their run. They are very big, they're very physical, and teams are only averaging 3.7 yards per carry, which when you look at how it matches up against what Kansas State wants to do, you like that. That being said, in the passing game, the pass rush has just been lacking, and they don't have that guy to turn to third and long, turn it up and get some heat on the quarterback. And I think that's why you see them struggle a little bit in the back end. They're inexperienced group, and we thought that front seven, that defensive line would be able to cover that up. They haven't been able to do that as much as we kind of thought they were. When you look at the stats, though, they're not a terrible defense. You look at what Kansas State and Baylor are doing. They're giving up similar yardage per game. Baylor allowing almost 25 points per game, which is very surprising for a Dave Aranda coach team. Now, a lot of those coming from unfortunate turnovers, some special teams mistakes. They've seemed to kind of straighten that out, and this is the best Baylor form we've seen as they beat Oklahoma. They go on the road and beat Texas Tech badly. They beat a very solid Kansas team. But are we going to get that Baylor this week against a very talented Kansas State team?
Well, that's my issue. When you look at the matchup for Baylor's defense, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we had to watch Kansas or West Virginia go up and down. No resistance. They scored at will, and that's an offense that I don't think has the weapons of a Kansas State, where you got a Deuce Vaughn, who's obviously playing really well, Martinez, or even their backups. Like, they all are able to run in the system and be effective. Maybe the backups give them a little more in the pass game, in Martinez giving them a little more in the run. But again, you even look at the wideouts. Knowles and number 8 are really good players, especially Knowles. I think he's really playing well. And I don't know. I look at how are they going to slow these weapons down when you've seen them struggle? They struggled mightily against Oklahoma just a week ago too. So I don't know.
Yeah, and what is most concerning about this matchup for me is if Kansas State was playing the very similar, like the way they were playing at the beginning of the year, where they were very one-dimensional and Adrian Martinez wasn't throwing over 20 times a game, I would like to match up a lot more because this is a very hard team to run the ball against. Baylor, their backers go sideline to sideline. I think Dylan Doyle is one of the more underrated backers in the country. You obviously have some dogs up front lately, and you look at what they were able to do against Texas, Kansas State, that is, they've been able to throw the ball too. I mean, they didn't run the ball particularly well, only averaging 4 yards per carry against Texas. But Adrian Martinez won 24 of 36 for 329 yards. And you're starting to see some of those explosive plays. Like, this Kansas State team wants to run the football with a guy like Adrian Martinez, with a running back like Deuce Vaughn. But when you start loading the box, like, guys like Malik Knowles are going to get loose.
Yeah, and that's my issue. I think, I do. The one thing that does favor Baylor is they can shut down, I think, what Kansas State wants to do in the run game. And I think it will be tough sledding. I think the D-line's a little too physical for a Kansas State O-line that I think is good, but I don't think is like an Oklahoma level good in terms of their ability to physically match up. Like, they might be athletic and and do their job, but I don't think their hammer is like of the type of line you need to control a Baylor team. But I don't know. I'm looking at it there again. What you say, they're not getting enough pressure on the quarterback, and then that's where you can disrupt Adrian Martinez. So I'm not so confident that Baylor is going to be able to check this offense as much as I think people think.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you. And then flipping the side, this Baylor offense has actually been extremely good this year. I mean, averaging 38 points per game. The last couple of weeks, they've been very, very strong. 45 points against Texas Tech, 35 points against Kansas, and 38 points against Oklahoma. I know those aren't world beater defenses, and out of all those defenses, Kansas State is probably the best defense. But you look at what Texas was able to do against Kansas State a week ago, turn around, give the ball to a guy like Bijan Robinson, give the ball to a guy like Roschon Johnson. They were averaging almost 7 yards per carry. Bijan Robinson averaged 7. Roschon Johnson averaged 8.9 yards per carry. You look at what Baylor just did against a very, I wouldn't say solid Oklahoma defense. That's what they were able to do. Blake Shapen only went 14 to 23 for 132 yards. Turn around and give the ball to a guy like Craig Williams for 25 carries, 192 yards, averaging 7.7 yards per carry. Kansas State needs to be able to stop the run because that is what Baylor wants to do. They want to establish that run with a very big, a very physical offensive line, and then work the play action. If Kansas State can't stop the run, Baylor's going to be scoring and running up the score too.
And that might be a struggle because it does feel like Kansas State is a bit of a smaller, more athletic defense, especially on their defensive line where they play 3 down and their nose guard's not huge. And I do like Higgins, but he's not a giant. And so maybe you can beat him up a little bit. I do think like conflating what Baylor can do in the run game versus Texas is I don't really think Baylor's in that level because Bijan Robinson's just so superior to anything that Baylor can trot out there right now.
Well, Bijan Robinson is, but I would say that Baylor offensive line is going to be able to lean heavy on that Kansas State defensive line. And Craig Williams, who hasn't really played much for Baylor this year, I mean, he's back being their lead back. Richard Reese was doing quite a good job kind of filling in as a true freshman, but Craig Williams is their guy. When he was back healthy, he's clearly their guy, getting 24 touches a game or 25 touches last week against the Sooners. All right, Dill, we don't normally do this a lot when we're taking sides, but this is when I was doing the prep work on this number jumped out at me. Baylor coming in at 3-point favorites at home. That line probably makes sense. Baylor's been playing good football. But Kansas State's a team that I'm not necessarily itching to bet against because of how talented they are. I'm going to the total, and I think 53 is a very, very low number.
I agree with that.
We just saw Baylor put up 38 points last week against Oklahoma. I get that defense isn't great, but Kansas State just gave up 34 points against Texas. I think both these offenses are going to be able to move the football. Kansas State probably going to hit some explosive plays through the air, and I think Baylor's going to be able to run on this Kansas State defense. 53 seems like quite the low number. I think this game is decided in the 30s, and this game might go over by a little bit.
I actually kind of agree with that. And you look at it like Baylor's not playing that slow. They're having games where there's high scores. West Virginia was a high score. Oklahoma was a high score. Like they're giving up points and they're scoring points. So I don't hate
one other thing.
I also will say, wait, what?
One other thing that I want to add. We saw the Nebraska version of Adrian Martinez last week with the fumbling, with the interceptions. And I wasn't necessarily not a fan of it because Adrian Martinez was being a playmaker. If you want to be on the over, you want to see Nebraska version of Adrian Martinez where he's a gunslinger, where he's making plays because he's scoring points or letting the other team score points against your team. I like that trend. I think Baylor with Craig Williams back is working that run game. And when Kansas State needs to load the box, Baylor has been hitting some explosive plays to some of those guys like Monterey Baldwin, Gavin Holmes the last couple of weeks. My lean on the side would probably be Kansas State in the points, but I really, really do like that over-under sitting at 53 because I think this game sails over.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I kind of love Kansas State in this game. I think I'm not convinced Baylor belongs in that group at the top of the Big 12 right now.
Well, does Kansas State belong there?
Oh, I think so because they're playing everybody top. They're not like I think they should have beaten TCU. I think they should. They're right in it with Texas, who I think is again right up at the top. And then you look at Oklahoma, Baylor. Like I'm not sure they're in that top echelon right now. I don't know. I just get the sense they're losing to teams they shouldn't be losing to. I mean, I know Oklahoma didn't have their starter, but to get blown out 49-0 is inexcusable no matter who's at quarterback. So I'm not convinced this Baylor team belongs with the Kansas State, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Texas.
I'll say this
I
though.
could be wrong, but that's
This
just
Baylor team, I think, is a lot better than their 6-3 record. Like you look at their 3 losses, they go on the road to BYU and lose one that they just were parking the bus. I just hated how that Baylor offense looked. It's on the road in Provo. BYU was a very confident and good team at the time. And then Oklahoma State, you outgain Oklahoma State. You just can't win the football game. And then on the road at West Virginia, you outgain West Virginia. If you don't give up the scoop and score for a touchdown, you're probably winning that game too. I'm not saying this team should be undefeated by any means.
They're in all these games. They shouldn't be in these games with these teams. They're not that good. But BYU, yeah, it was a tough game at the time. We all thought, but BYU, that's not aging well.
It's not. You're right. It's not. But it's hard to deny that the last 3 games is the best we've seen Baylor this year. They're getting healthier, and it's a more confident team on both sides of the football. This is not a Baylor team that I'm trying to bet against right now because it looks like the Dave Aranda team from last year where they're just kind of getting it going. And again, Kansas State, on the other hand, probably not playing some of their best football they've played. I mean, that game looked a little bit more respectable, but that was kind of Texas just parking the bus and letting Kansas State climb their way back in there. That first half, they were not competitive. They were getting ran all over. Kansas State's not a team that I want to bet on. That being said, give me the points over 53. I think you see a point total over this in probably the 60 range. I think both teams can get to 30. That'll do it for the boys, though. Again, we really do appreciate the support you guys have shown. If you like the content, subscribe to the channel. We really do appreciate it. And then let us know in the comment section what your takes are on this game. We do appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.